Lin Fan returned to East Lower Quarter by a different route than the one he had used to leave. Repetition was for people who believed a successful path remained safe because it had succeeded once. He crossed behind the old storage shed, climbed the rear slope near the abandoned punishment room, and paused beneath the eaves until two early rising disciples passed with empty water buckets. They spoke in hushed tones about Han Wei waiting in the training yard before dawn. One said Lin Fan had not appeared. The other said perhaps that was the point. Neither knew how close they had come to the person they discussed. Good. The rumor had begun before fact formed. That gave him cover. He reached the back of his room as the first gray line of dawn touched the roofs. The window remained as he had left it. Inside, the ash line near the door was disturbed. Not by a note. By a foot. Someone had entered. Lin Fan stayed outside the window and listened. Breathing inside. One person. Light. Trying to be quiet. Not a steward. Stewards carried authority in their breathing. Not Jiang Hu. Too controlled. Not Han Wei. He was still in the trench or emerging from it. Lu Chen would not risk entering personally while connected to the training yard question. Wang Lei? Possible. Lin Ro? Unlikely. Her breathing would be quicker if she broke into his room. The person shifted near the table. Searching. Lin Fan looked down at his own condition. Mud on robe. Blood scent. Decay chi clinging to skin. First burial ring cold beneath the root. If he entered directly, the intruder would see too much. If he waited, they might find something important. What remained inside? Rice packet mostly hidden. Heat-clearing pills. Lamp ash. No token. No root shaving. No obvious evidence. The intruder could find absence. Absence was evidence if the observer knew what should be present. He needed to control the discovery. Lin Fan picked up a small pebble and tossed it against the outer wall 2 rooms away. Tap. The breathing inside stopped. Tap. The intruder moved toward the door, not the window. Good. Expecting someone outside the hall. Lin Fan slipped through the window while the intruder's attention turned forward. His feet touched the floor without sound. The room smelled of disturbed dust, cold lamp ash, and a faint medicinal scent that did not belong to him. The intruder stood near the door with one hand on the latch. Thin shoulders. Dark outer robe. Hair tied tightly. Not Wan Lei. The person turned. Lin Ro's eyes widened. For one breath, surprise stripped both of them of performance. She looked at the window behind him, then at the mud on his robe, the blood at his collar, the black-green stain near his sleeve, and finally his face. He looked at the small packet in her hand. Cooling powder. Better quality than what she had given him before. Stolen or borrowed from herb garden duty. Kindness again. At a worse time. You were not here, she whispered. You entered my room. The counter struck her. Guilt and fear crossed her face at once. I knocked. You did not answer. I thought your root pain. So you entered. I only wanted to leave medicine. At dawn. She lowered her eyes. Outside the door, footsteps passed and slowed. Lin Fan stepped close and put one finger to his lips. Lin Ro froze. The footsteps paused outside. A young male voice called, Lin Fan? Wang Lei. Lin Ro's face paled. Lin Fan pointed to the narrow space behind the door. She moved there silently, clutching the cooling powder. Lin Fan took one heat-clearing pill from the table, crushed it between 2 fingers, and smeared powder beneath his own nose. The sharp medicinal scent covered some of the decay chi. Then he sat on the bed, bent slightly forward, and let the body show fatigue. Speak, he said. Wang Lei opened the door a hand's width. He did not enter. Progress. Steward is asking whether you are awake. I am. Wang Lei's eyes moved over him. You look. Lin Fan looked up. Wang Lei stopped. Sick, he finished weakly. Root pain. Right. Steward said Elder Gu wants you to report after the morning bell. Which steward? Night steward. The one by the west yard. Wang Lei swallowed. He said if anyone asks, you were in your room. Interesting. The watcher had seen enough to create uncertainty and wanted a controlled statement before reporting upward. Or Elder Gu had instructed him not to expose the movement immediately. Either way, the watcher was managing information. Why tell me? Wang Lei hesitated. He told me to. Why you? Another hesitation. Because I was already outside. Lie. Lin Fan let silence stretch. Wang Lei broke. Zheng Hu wanted to know if you left. I came to see. Then the steward saw me. Useful. Zheng Hu still acted through old habits. The night steward had used Wang Lei as messenger rather than confront Lin Fan directly. More useful. Tell the steward, Lin Fan said, that root pain worsened before dawn and I did not sleep well. I will report after the bell. Wang Lei nodded quickly. Tell Zheng Hu nothing. He will ask. Then tell him that you knocked and I answered. That is all? That is all he can afford to know. Wang Lei's mouth tightened, but he nodded again. He closed the door. Lin Fan waited until his footsteps faded. Then he turned to Lin Ro. She stepped from behind the door, face pale. You should not have been able to enter through the window like that with root pain. You should not have been in my room. She flinched. Leave the medicine. She blinked, startled. You will take it? I said leave it. She placed the packet on the table. Lin Fan looked at the herb powder without touching. Where did you get it? Damaged stock from herb garden duty. Do not lie poorly. Her fingers tightened. I traded my ration ticket. Foolish. Predictable. Potentially useful. Why? She looked at his robe again. Because you looked like you were holding yourself together with thread yesterday. And you thought a little powder would solve that? No. Then? Her voice lowered. I thought no one else would give it without wanting something. Lin Fan studied her. Kindness, but not blind. She understood cost. She simply paid it too freely. You want something too, he said. She looked up, hurt. I do not. You want the world to contain proof that helping is not always punished. The words struck deeper than he intended. Lin Ro's eyes reddened, but she did not cry. Good. Tears would have wasted time. Is that wrong? She asked. It is expensive. Everything here is expensive. For the first time, Lin Fan looked at her with genuine reassessment. Not praise. Reassessment. Yes, he said. It is. Outside, the first morning bell began to ring. Low. Distant. The day opened. Lin Fan's first burial ring rotated once beneath his root, more stable after the underground cultivation. The cooling powder on the table smelled clean, with faint traces of blue leaf and frostmint. Better than Elder Gu's pills. Enough to hide some of the decay scent if used externally. Enough to slow fever. Lin Ro had brought something useful at a cost to herself. That made her a voluntary creditor unless handled carefully. Lin Fan did not accept debts accidentally. I will repay the ration ticket, he said. You do not have to. I know. She fell silent. He took a pinch of the powder and mixed it with water from the basin, then smeared it along his collar and wrists. The cooling scent rose, covering mud, blood, and withering decay. He kept the rest in the packet and handed it back to her. She hesitated. Take it, he said. If I keep it, people will ask where I obtained herb garden powder. She understood then and took it quickly. If anyone asks, you came to tell me the herb garden steward wants injured disciples to report symptoms for record. Again? You need better lies. Repetition helps. Despite fear, her mouth twitched slightly. Almost a smile. Then it vanished. Where were you? She whispered. Lin Fan looked toward the window. Learning what this sect forgot. She did not understand. That was fine. She did not need to. The bell rang again. Lin Fan stood. His legs felt weak but functional. The first burial had changed something subtle in his movement. Pain still existed, but it no longer scattered as widely. The burial ring caught part of it, rotating pressure into the root instead of letting it flood the body. Dangerous if overused. Useful for walking. Foundation transformation had begun to show in the smallest way. He opened the door. The corridor outside was not empty. 2 disciples stood farther down, pretending to adjust their belts. Wang Lei lingered near the corner. A steward waited at the row entrance, eyes on Lin Fan's door. So, the absence had been noticed enough to arrange watchers. Lin Fan stepped out calmly. Lin Ro slipped out after him and turned the opposite direction, satchel held close. No one stopped her. For now. The steward at the row entrance watched Lin Fan approach. Elder Gu wants you after the bell. I heard. The steward's gaze moved over the mud stains on Lin Fan's hem. Lin Fan let him see them. Then he let the cooling powder scent reach him. The steward frowned. You went outside? To vomit. The answer was plain enough to make the nearby disciples uncomfortable. Root pain, medicine, vomiting. Illness explained mud better than secrets if the listener wanted an ordinary reason. The steward did not want to discuss vomit in front of disciples. Report to the side hall. Yes. Lin Fan walked past him. Behind him, whispers began. He really is sick. Or pretending. Would you pretend that in front of a steward? I do not know what he would pretend. That sentence again. Good. The first burial sat cold beneath his root. The hidden chamber's word return sat colder in memory. And above the west training yard, Han Wei would be emerging from a trench with questions, a recovered token, and no answer clean enough to satisfy him. Lin Fan had obtained the opportunity. Now everyone else would begin noticing the space it left behind. The space appeared first as timing. Wang Lei had found him awake but not where he expected. The steward had seen mud but received an illness explanation. Lin Ro had entered with kindness and left with a better lie. Han Wei would find the token but not the disciple. Elder Gu would hear all of it after the facts had already begun contradicting one another. Contradiction was not always danger. Sometimes it was cover. If everyone held a different piece, no one could assemble the full shape without asking the right question. Lin Fan intended to make the right question look wasteful. Root pain explained the pallor. Vomiting explained the mud. Han Wei explained the training yard connection. Kitchen contamination explained decay residue. Elder Gu's own observation order explained why others kept speaking of Lin Fan at all. Each explanation was partial. Together, they formed fog. Lin Fan walked toward the side hall inside that fog. The first burial ring pressed coldly against his root, reminding him that fog did not last. Before it cleared, he needed to stabilize the transformation and decide how much of the opportunity to reveal as bait. Not to Han Wei. Not to Lu Chen. To Elder Gu. The elder would look harder if given nothing. He would look more predictably if given a small, controlled something. Old root decay chi beneath the training yard. That would be the bait. It was also true. Truth made the best bait because it survived being bitten. If Elder Gu sent someone to inspect, they would find old decay chi. If Han Wei described the trench, it would align. If the night steward reported movement near the yard, the story would not collapse. All paths would point toward a minor underground hazard and an unstable disciple foolish or clever enough to use it for temporary relief. The hidden chamber would remain one level deeper. The 9 burials withering root art would remain deeper still. And the chamber's recognition would remain in a place no elder could inspect without tearing open more than stone. Lin Fan reached the side hall path and slowed. A disciple who had truly spent the pre-dawn vomiting from root pain would not walk too cleanly. He let fatigue lower his shoulders by a fraction. He allowed the bruise to pull his left step short. He did not fake weakness, he selected which real weakness became visible. The steward at the row entrance saw exactly what Lin Fan wanted him to see. A pale disciple. Mud. Medicine scent. Root pain. Not opportunity. Never opportunity. The steward hesitated as if he wanted to ask why a sick disciple had gone near the training yard before dawn, then decided the question would create paperwork. Lin Fan lowered his eyes at the correct moment. People with small authority liked obedience more than clarity. A bowed head gave them permission to keep the world simple. He had learned that in the outer sect during his first life, then relearned it in larger halls where elders with jade seals behaved little differently from gate clerks with wooden tablets. Elder Gu is waiting, the steward said at last. I know. Do not say unnecessary things. Lin Fan almost laughed. That advice, at least, was sincere. He gave the steward a faint nod and walked on. The first burial ring remained cold, but the earlier sharpness had begun to settle into a controlled ache. Useful. Pain made his expression easier. The trick was allowing enough of it to show without letting it command his pace. At the corner before the side hall, he saw Lin row in the distance. She did not approach. Good. She had understood his earlier glance. Kindness could help only if it did not insist on standing beside the fire. Wang Lei, less subtle, hovered near the dormitory path and looked as if he might shout a question across the courtyard. Lin Ro caught his sleeve and shook her head once. Better. Lin Fan kept walking. The people around him saw weakness, worry, and discipline summons. They did not see the chamber mark under his skin pulse once in quiet recognition. First return. The phrase did not come as sound. It arrived as pressure, old and patient, like roots touching stone from the other side. Lin Fan did not answer. Not here. Not under daylight. Not while Elder Gu was waiting to measure every breath. The recognition withdrew, but not completely. It stayed like a buried coal beneath ash, quiet enough to hide, hot enough to remind him that the chamber had not finished speaking.